I visited Kenya as the first sitting American president to come from Kenya.
If you actually care about election meddling, you should have a ton of questions for Barack Obama and his intelligence chiefs who knowingly allowed meddling to happen.
If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did.
Barack Obama even told his cyber people to stand down.
President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place.
My take is that Carter Page is more like Inspector Gadget than he is Jason Bourne or James Bond.
Go, Gadget, planner!
I have not seen one scintilla of evidence that this president colluded, conspired, confederated with Russia.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome to this brand new edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brand new week of broadcasting here on the American Family Radio Network. I am Brian Fisher, congenial, convivial, amiable, effervescent, as always. Program, as always, is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Great to have you in the conversation with us today. Let's go right to the Word of God. We use a schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. Pray.afa.net. Find a scripture passage for every day there. You can read it in your own copy of the Word of God. Then pray the prayer that's on that page back to God. It incorporates the very words and the very themes of the passage of Scripture for that day. Now, what we are talking about here today, and I want to kind of go up one specific direction today. There's a general application here. Dealing with an issue of people that are growing older. They're in their senior years, and they're beginning to wonder who's going to be there for them when they reach old age. You know, we're living in an increasingly fractured culture. Families are fractured. You have marriages splitting up, and so the bonds that connect families together, the family of origin, those are all busted up. You know, and a lot of times, I can speak for myself in this score, a lot of times sons and daughters that are in an environment where the family of origin just splits up, it's just shattered by divorce. It's hard to feel connected. There's no home anymore. You may have an individual relationship with your dad or with your mom, but it just is not the same as the whole family coming together at Thanksgiving or Christmas or the 4th of July or whatever. And so these connections that connect us together, they begin to fray, and sometimes they begin to snap altogether. And so somebody who's gone through something like that, getting toward the golden years, and you wonder, who's going to be there for me when I get to that point? And God's got an answer for that question here in the passage we're going to look at today. Now, chapters 46 and 47 of Isaiah, if you want to find out where we are in the Scripture. Right away, in the first two verses, we are introduced to the two greatest Babylonian gods. One was named Bel, and the other was named Nebo. These are the two chief gods of Babylon. But notice how Isaiah describes them. Bel bows down, Nebo stoops. Their idols are on beasts and livestock. These things you carry are borne as burdens on weary beasts. They stoop. They bow down together. They cannot save the burden, but themselves go into captivity. So what Isaiah is pointing out with these gods represented by these idols that are made by the hands of men, he says, look, these gods bow down and stoop, and the reason they're doing that, Isaiah probably watching them march through the streets, and he's, look, when these beasts of burden, when they stop to rest, or they stop to get some water or to eat, the burdens that they carry on their backs, these idols are strapped to their backs. They're the burdens that they are carrying. they kneel down, and when they kneel down, the heads of the gods they worship are staring at the dirt. And so Isaiah's point is they cannot save the burden. These idols that the people of Babylon are worshiping and serving and praying to, they can't do a thing for you. And Isaiah's point is this very simply: what good is a God that you have to carry? Isn't the purpose of having a God is having someone who will carry you when you need it? Isn't the purpose of having a God to have him be the one who carries you? You don't carry him. He's the one that carries you. But the Babylonians had gods that they instead had to carry. And this is what Isaiah notes about what they do in verse 7. They carry it, they set it in its place, and it just stands there. It cannot move from its place to go where you are to reach you in your place of trouble. If one cries to it, it does not answer or save him from his trouble. It just stands there, mute, silent, unhearing, uncaring. It can't help you. It can't answer your prayers. It cannot come to your aid. But Isaiah says, look, our God is different. He says to Jacob and Israel, verse 3, you have been born by me from before your birth. Here's a God who carries us instead of us having to carry him. I carried you from the womb, referring back to the founding of the nation in Egypt. Even to your old age I am he, and to gray hairs I will carry you. I have made you, and I will bear you. I will carry you, and I will save. Now think about what unbelievers have to do in a time of crisis. They have to depend on the work of their own hands. They have to depend entirely on their own efforts, on their own strength, on their own wisdom, on their own strategies. That's like depending upon these idols. No different, because the people were depending on what? The work of their own hands, their own strength, their own innovation, and that's not going to get it in the end. But Isaiah says, look, we don't have to be like that. We have a God who will carry us when we need help and strength beyond ourselves. God says, I started sustaining you and carrying you when you were still in the womb. It's you whom I have carried from the womb, not something that became you, by the way. Notice the pro-life implications there. God says, I have carried you from the womb, not something that became you, not some blob of protoplasm, but it is you I carried from the womb. I'm the one who delivered you. I might have used a doctor as my instrument, but I was the one who brought you into the world. You have been born by me from before your birth. Now, God, Isaiah says, goes on to promise that just as he carried us at the beginning of our lives, he will carry us to the very end of our lives. Even to your old age, I am he, and to gray hairs, I will carry you. I have made you, I will bear you, I will carry you, and I will save you. So I think he has a word for those that are reaching their golden years, feeling some uncertainty, feeling some fear. You may feel very keenly your distance from your children, from your grandchildren. There's some kind of relational distance, some kind of relational rupture, some quarrel that's caused a breach or a break. Old age can be even worse. And you can begin to wonder, who is going to care for me? Who's going to get me to the doctor when I need to go? And God assures you, even to your old age, I am he, and to gray hairs, I will carry you. Well, let's all go to prayer. Lord God, we bow before you today as Yahweh, the Almighty One, our Redeemer and the Holy One of Israel. You alone are God, and there is no other. You alone are God, and there is none like you. You are the one who makes known the end from the beginning. What you have said, that you will bring about, and what you have planned, that you will do. I ask you in Jesus' name to turn your full attention to us this day. We praise you for upholding us since we were conceived, and for carrying us since our birth, even when we did not know you. We pray that even to our old age and gray hairs, you will sustain us. Amen.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper and deeper in credit card debt and you're not sure how to fix the problem? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management is a nonprofit organization that will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, and reduce your interest rates by as much as 60%. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. It's not a loan. It's a smart way to relieve your stress, meet your obligations, and preserve your self-respect. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Gather up your bills and call this toll-free number for a free, no-obligation debt analysis. 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813. If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Newly elected San Francisco Mayor London Breed stated in her first interview since taking office that things have become so deplorable in the city that there is more feces on the sidewalks than she'd ever seen growing up. We aren't just talking about from dogs, we're talking about from humans. A 153-block stretch of downtown San Fran revealed trash on every block, 100 used hypodermic needles, and more than 300 piles of feces along the 20-mile stretch of streets and sidewalks. Filthy streets, the legacy of regressive policies.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. You are listening to Ultra 4K radio here on Focal Point. More content per cubic inch of air than any other place on your dial. Now, my goal is to be the hardest working man in conservative talk radio. Now, I don't know if I'm doing it or not, but I want to tell you that is my goal, because I want to bring you the best I can possibly bring you in information and news and perspective on what's going on in the world today. By the way, just another quick reminder, 2 weeks from today, we're going to start a new schedule. Focal Point will just be on for 1 hour starting on August 6th. We'll be on from 1 to 2 Central. And then from 2 to 3 o'clock Central, you'll have the opportunity to listen to Stacy Washington. Her program is called Stacy on the Right. So you get a chance to hear her. She's a strong conservative, staunch conservative in her values. She'll be on from 2 to 3, starting just 2 weeks from today on Focal Point, right here on our Talk Network. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the late-breaking news regarding the FISA warrant that was issued that started this whole brouhaha in the first place. And the FISA warrant that started this whole thing was started to surveil Carter Page. You ask, well, who is Carter Page? Carter Page is a nobody. I mean, I'm not saying he's a nobody in God's eyes. I'm just saying on the political landscape, he doesn't have any clout. He doesn't have any importance. He doesn't have any visibility. This guy is about as small a fish as you can go after. But the FISA warrant was issued to go after Carter Page and then people that were connected to him. So I mean, the whole FISA warrant thing is just, I don't know what to call it. It's just bizarre that you could get a warrant to surveil the Trump campaign with something so thin. You know, I heard a prosecutor this morning saying, look, if you brought me this information for a warrant, I couldn't get a warrant. I couldn't get a warrant to bust up a neighborhood block party. There's just not enough here to do anything. It's just not enough weight to the information that's in the warrant. You know, and again, this goes back to something. This is not news, but now it's being abundantly confirmed. That's what's important about what's going on. We are now getting confirmation that everything that we have been telling you Everything that I have been telling you since day one is true. That the first FISA warrant that started this whole surveillance thing that put Trump and his campaign team in the crosshairs was started by this FISA warrant that was issued to troll Carter Page. And even as James Comey said, James Comey, the head of the FBI, remember this FISA warrant was issued in October of 2016. In July of 2017, almost a year later, these are James Comey's words, he said that dossier was the basis for the FISA warrant. We have plenty of evidence that they couldn't have gotten the FISA warrant without the Steele dossier, the dossier that was prepared by Christopher Steele, funded by the Democratic National Committee, funded by Hillary Clinton, information which was not revealed to the FISA judge. He never knew, he was never told that this is just a piece of campaign propaganda. This isn't research. This is campaign propaganda. He was not told that. And so he believed that what he was being presented was a legitimate intelligence document. And James Comey, in July of 2017, said this dossier is salacious and unverified. That is a direct quote from the guy who was the head of the FBI at the time. So the accusations in this dossier are salacious. And what he's thinking of there specifically is the content, the section of the dossier that referred to Donald Trump being accused of cavorting with prostitutes in a hotel in Moscow. Salacious, James Comey says. The next word he says, unverified. We can't prove anything in this dossier. There's no proof. There's no evidence. There's nothing to support the wild accusations, salacious accusations in this dossier. You know, and it's part of FBI rules. It's a part of FBI rules that you cannot take a warrant to a judge. You cannot take a warrant to a judge unless everything in that warrant application can be verified as fact, as something that represents the facts on the ground regarding the crime or the individual that you want to prosecute, that you want to pursue. Everything's got to be verified. You can't go before a judge and hand him something that cannot be verified by eyewitnesses and evidence. But all that was handed to these FISA judges was this completely unverified dossier, and so apparently the judge said, well, this is coming from the intelligence community. They probably can't tell me everything that's behind it because that's classified information, so I'm going to go ahead and rubber stamp this FISA warrant, and that's how I got into action. Here's Carter Page, clip number 1. Carter Page talking about this FISA warrant. Remember, he's the guy that was surveilled first. He's a small fish. I mean, this guy is not a small fish. This guy is a goldfish. This guy maybe had some relationships with Russians. He might have gone to some meetings that Russians were at and that he was at, but the idea that he was serving as some kind of top secret super spy for the United States is laughable, and even Carter Page knows it. Clip 1.
This is so ridiculous. It's just beyond words. You know, it's you're talking about misleading the courts. It's just so misleading going through those 400-plus page documents. You know, where do you even begin? It's literally a complete joke, and it only continues. It's just really sad. I've never been an agent of the foreign power by any stretch of the imagination. You know, I may have, back in the G20 when they were getting ready to do that in St. Petersburg, I might have participated in a few meetings that a lot of people, including people from the Obama administration, were sitting on in Geneva, Paris, etc. But I've never been anywhere near what's being described herein.
So Carter Page, the word he uses is ridiculous. The judge, the FISA judge, was being misled. He was being deceived. He was being fooled. He was being lied to by FBI agents. And remember, you got this whole fruit of the poisonous tree concept, which is a very important one in justice. We've talked about it before, but it's worth reviewing the basics of it. if you go get evidence and you don't have a warrant to get it, to collect it, then you can't use any of that evidence in a trial, not any of it. And you can't use any evidence that you might acquire as a result of that search. It might lead you to some other places. You can't use that information, that data, in a trial. It's the fruit of the poison tree. If the tree itself is poisoned, which this thing was from the moment that FISA warrant was issued, because there was no basis for it, then everything that comes after that is inadmissible. It's all poisoned. You can't use it. So that's the reality that we are dealing with here. Now here is Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy, clip number 2, talking here with Brett Baer. And here's his take on Carter Page.
My take is that Carter Page is more like Inspector Gadget than he is Jason Bourne or James Bond. Trump never met him. Trump never had a conversation with him. I'm sure he's been on the FBI's radar for a long time, well before 2016. Here's what we'll never know, Brett. We'll never know whether or not the FBI had enough without the dossier, the unvetted DNC-funded dossier, because they included it. And everyone who reads this FISA application sees the amount of reliance they placed on this product funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC. So that's point number 1, is the dossier and its use.
And the point here, and he says, he says, if you want to think of what Carter Page is like, picture Inspector Gadget in your head. Now, I don't know if you know who Inspector Gadget is. We had kids that were young when Inspector Gadget was big on TV, one of their absolutely favorite programs. I mean, they would build their day around being sure that they got to watch Inspector Gadget. And he was just absolutely clueless detective that just stumbled through one crime after another and managed to solve a few of them by sheer happenstance and luck. So anyway, Trey Gowdy says, look, Carter Page is not somebody that anybody had any reason to be afraid of or to be surveilled as a possible spy. This wasn't the type for it. And Gowdy says, look, we're never going to know. We're never, ever going to know if the FBI had enough information, data, evidence to get the FISA warrant without the Steele dossier. The evidence is that they did not. But he says we'll never know that. So what that means then, ladies and gentlemen, if the Steele dossier was unverified and never should have been submitted as the basis of a FISA warrant, then there's nothing else that's come out of this thing that's admissible in court. So that's kind of where we're at, fruit of the poison tree. Nothing ought to be released into court. Let's grab clip number 3. This is Trey Gowdy. And he's talking here about the warrant and the role of the FBI. Let's listen.
The other thing I hope my fellow citizens will take note of is the FBI missed a really good opportunity to tell the judge exactly who paid for that. If you look at the footnote, it takes a lot more effort to define it the way they did, where you have no idea who funded it, than just to come right out and say the DNC hired Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired Christopher Steele. There, done. That's an easy footnote. Everybody can follow it. But for whatever reason, the FBI decided not to represent that to a court.
Well, for whatever reason, I mean, it's clear that Trey Gowdy is saying the reason that they had is they did not want anybody who read this warrant to know where the dossier came from. We did not want anyone to know who paid for the dossier, because that would kill the warrant. I mean, once the FISA judge saw the name of Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, the law firm Perkins Coie, and realized that this was just campaign propaganda, this was not, in fact, a highly sourced intelligence document, it was just campaign bloviation, then he'd kick it out of there so fast to give you a nosebleed. And they did not want this judge to read that, because apparently they felt like they had this judge in the tank because they gave him this really substandard application and he signed off on it. So they couldn't give this guy anything that would tip his hand that he was dealing with something completely fraudulent here. So anyway, that's the deal. The judge that signed off on the warrant never knew that Hillary funded it, the DNC funded it, never knew it was just campaign propaganda. Be right back. Stay with us.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Moral relativism is a pernicious influence in any society. When people reject the idea of absolute objective truth, whether they realize it at the time or not, they foreclose the possibility of living in a society where some things are always right and some things are always wrong. Historically, such a society has proven to be a very dangerous place in which to live unless you are young, vigorous, productive, or part of the majority group in that society. When there is no agreed upon definition of absolute truth, then inevitably truth becomes subjective. You end up with phrases like situation ethics, all truth is relative, and that may be true for you, but it's not true for me. When that happens, the very young, the very old, the mentally and physically challenged, and anyone outside the majority viewpoint become increasingly marginalized and disrespected and discriminated against. Moral relativism vitiates and weakens any basis for moral outrage. For instance, in Ben Stein's wonderful documentary Expelled, a perfectly civilized German guide to a final solution Holocaust site could not condemn the Nazis who committed the atrocities. Although she herself said that she wouldn't do it and it was wrong for her, she couldn't judge them and say it was wrong for them. In a society where moral relativism reigns supreme, the only thing that such a society cannot tolerate nor affirm are people who persist in believing that there are moral absolutes, namely Christians who affirm the historic teaching of the Christian faith embodied in the pronouncement of their Savior, Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me." For more information about Southern Evangelical Seminary, go to ses.edu. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. One of our hobbies here at Focal Point is to keep track of millennials and their comings and goings and their proclivities and what makes for the stuff that they need to be trigger-free in their environment. And Jeff, you were telling me on the break about the Devil Rays Farm Club did something here to take some people off.
Yeah, their farm team is known as the Montgomery Biscuits. I'd never heard of them, but that's apparently the Devil Rays farm team. And they decided to have a promotion and have Millennial Night. And they promoted it as having a lot of selfie stations, participation ribbons, a lot of avocados, including special avocado burger with gluten-free buns and safe spaces and this nap stations and stuff like that. And apparently people got pretty upset about that.
You need a safe space if your team falls behind. Yeah. You need some place to go where you can lick your wounds and try to recover from the trauma and the disappointment and the impact and being let down by people that you count on. You can see why they would need a safe space.
Oh, yeah. But apparently they have been attacked, and people are highly upset with this whole thing, thus validating the whole point of
well, yeah. Yeah, you get upset, you're just proving the point. Yeah, but you were saying that something about the people that actually orchestrated this whole event.
The whole marketing for this minor league team, majority of them are millennials, and they were just having a little fun.
Just having fun. So they're laughing at themselves, and they're laughing at their fellow millennials, and people got trigger happy, and that was the end of all the fun.
Apparently something got lost in the sarcasm. I don't know.
Okay. You know, there's a story that came out about this Russian agent. Her name is Maria Butina. Maybe you've heard all about that. And the media was just a lather, worked up into a lather over this Russian agent because the word got out that she was having meetings with senior U.S. officials. And so they were agog. There were headlines. There were investigative reporters assigned. And then it turns out that the problematic meetings that she had took place in 2015. 15 with senior officials from the Obama administration. You want to know why you haven't read a story about her in 3 days? That's the reason right there. Does not fit the narrative. Therefore, as far as they are concerned, it's not even something that exists or is newsworthy. All right, let's go back to our good friend Trey Gowdy. This is clip number 4. Rob, are we that far into the sound bites already? 1, 2, 3, and this is number 4. That's exactly right. Brett Baer starts off with a question here, a direct question for Trey Gowdy. You know, and Brett Baer is a serious newsman. I think he's probably, maybe along with Chris Wallace, probably the best journalist working in television today. You know, he's a straight shooter, doesn't have an agenda, just wants to get at the truth. He can smell bologna a mile away, and he goes after it. He wants to take the wrapping off that bologna and let everybody smell it for themselves. So Brett Baer is a good journalist, and he's talking here with Trey Gowdy about this Russian business and this panting that the left has been doing about Russia collusion, Russia. So here's the question that Gowdy answered, and that Brett Baer asked, and here's Gowdy's answer.
Are you equally adamant that the president has not colluded with Russia?
I have not seen one scintilla of evidence that this president colluded, conspired, confederated with Russia. And neither has anyone else, or you may rest assured Adam Schiff would have leaked it. So that's why they've moved off of collusion onto obstruction of justice, which is now their current preoccupation.
You know, and so Trey Gowdy, and Gowdy is a guy that's all about the evidence. You know, he's all about having fact-based investigation, fact-based prosecution, all that stuff. I mean, he has been a prosecutor. He has very high standards about that, and that's how you do a prosecution. That's how you get a warrant, is by presenting solid evidence that can be substantiated and backed up. That's how you go about getting a warrant. So if there were facts out there, and Trey Gowdy basically is not a friend of Obama's. I don't know if you've seen some of the things that he said about, Trump. Some of the things that Trey Gowdy has said about President Trump, and a number of them are not complimentary. So you can't say that Trey Gowdy is in the bag for Donald Trump. There are things about Donald Trump he doesn't like, things about Donald Trump he thinks he should have done differently, et cetera. He's even out there today. This shows you how non-Trumpist he is. He's out there today saying anybody that works for Donald Trump in foreign affairs ought to resign because of how dismal his performance was in Helsinki with Vladimir Putin. That's Trey Gowdy. So this is a guy, if there was evidence that implicated Donald Trump, Trey Gowdy would be the first guy to admit it, and he says, look, there is nothing here. Not one scintilla of evidence that President Trump colluded, that he conspired, that he confederated with Russia, and nobody else has any evidence like this. And you know it, because if there was any evidence like this, Adam Schiff would have leaked it to the press months ago. And so Gowdy says, look, that's why they've forgotten all about collusion with Russia. You're not going to see the Democrats or people on the left going after that. They're not talking about collusion anymore, nothing about collusion. Now it's all obstruction of justice, obstruction of justice, obstruction. So they went from Russia. They gave up on that after a while. Then they went to collusion. That didn't go anywhere. They gave up on that. Now it's obstruction, and they're not going to get anywhere with that either, because the only things that President Trump did that they're complaining about are things that he was entitled to do by the Constitution of the United States. And Alan Dershowitz says, look, you can't impeach a president for exercising his constitutional powers. He has complete, according to by the Constitution, he has complete authority over the Justice Department. So he can direct prosecutions, he can urge that prosecutions be started, he can command that prosecutions stop, he can unclassify any evidence that he wants to. That's the president's role under the Constitution. And so, this whole idea that somehow he obstructed justice by firing people who should have been fired, is just from a constitutional standpoint, it's just poppycock, whatever poppycock is. I don't even know what poppycock is. I don't know. I'm not going to use that word until I find out what it means, and then I'm probably not going to use it again anyway. That's a very uncreative word. I'm ashamed of myself for using it. Now let's go to clip a number. What is poppycock? Have you got it?
Nonsense, rubbish, balderdash, blather, garbage.
Ooh, I haven't used blather in a while.
Yeah, blather or ilk. If you could work those two into the same sentence, we'd have we'd score double jeopardy or double points.
So all this stuff about obstruction is just so much blather. That's all it is. It's just bloviating blather. To coin a phrase, the executive producer just sent your host a note. You are full of poppycock.
Oh.
So at least I'm glad it wasn't a bad word. So, all right, now here's clip 5. This is Trey Gowdy talking again to Brett Baer, and he's talking here about the people, the intelligence people, the personnel in our intelligence community that went after Trump, that were the cheerleaders in vilifying and demonizing Donald Trump and just throwing all kinds of bloviating blather at him, false accusations that he's treasonous and all this kind of stuff. So Trey Gowdy talks about them in clip number 5.
Yeah, Brett, you don't even have to be a Trump supporter to be mindful of the fact that John Brennan thinks he's guilty of a crime for which you can be hanged, that John Brennan thinks that he should be in the dustbin of history, that Jim Comey thinks impeachment is too good of a remedy, and Jim Comey now thinks that everyone should vote Democrat, so Bernie Sanders will be the head of the Budget Committee and Dianne Feinstein will be head of Intel. I mean, these are the people that were supposed to be dispassionately, objectively investigating a fact pattern, and they have as much animus against Donald Trump as anything I have seen in my 8 years in politics. Add into that Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and the other unidentified FBI agents who also wanted him to resign or be impeached or thought he was destabilizing.
All right, so he's talking about John Brennan. You know, and John Brennan has said he thinks that Donald Trump is treasonous. That's the only crime, by the way, that is actually specified in the Constitution. It's the crime of treason. Now, in Article 1, Section 8, you find that Congress has authority to punish piracies. So that is considered to be a crime and all that sort of thing. But the only crime that is actually spelled out and the standards of evidence that are required are spelled out is the crime of treason. And the penalty for treason is the death penalty. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, 1953. They betrayed our atomic secrets to Russia. What did they get? They got the electric chair because that's what you do with traitors. They're put to death. So John Brennan's out there wildly throwing out this accusation that Donald Trump is guilty of treason. He's a treasonous president. Well, what do you do with traitors in America? You hang them. You electrocute them. So John Brennan's out there, and this guy's supposed to be a distinguished member of the media elite, and he thinks Donald Trump ought to be hanged. You know, and Jim Comey said impeachment is too good of a remedy. Trey Gowdy is exactly right about that. Too good for Donald Trump to get impeached and thrown out of the White House. And Jim Comey is now out there campaigning for the Democratic Party. Here's a guy, everybody's, oh, no, this guy's not biased. He's a lifelong Republican. What are you saying he's biased? He's a lifelong Republican. Served under President George W. Bush. So when you say he's biased, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, here's this lifelong Republican now. He's out there urging people to vote for the Democrats. And then he got worried because he started listening to some of the bloviating blather from the Democrats, and he said, oh, wow. And now he's trying to warn the Democrats from turning into full-fledged socialists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because that's just lunatic stuff. That's lunacy. That's far side of the moon stuff. And he says, you guys can't lose your minds. I mean, that was the expression he used. I don't know what the exact phrase was, but it was like, don't lose your mind. Don't go insane here pursuing this crazy theory of socialism, which Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are out there. They're saying this socialism, this crackpot socialism, is now the mainstream of the Democratic Party. Be right back.
Women and men alike find themselves in despair after an abortion. Every woman who had an abortion was for a short time a mother, every man a father. But afterwards, they're all people in pain, anger, sadness, relationship problems. These often accompany an abortion. But there is hope. Call 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who has already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
So they asked me to enter my email address, and the next thing I know, I start getting emails from companies I never even knew existed. What's up with that?
Here at the American Family Association, you have our word that we won't give away, sell, or lease your email address to any other organization or company. We're thankful when you take the time to subscribe to AFA Action Alerts, 1 Million Moms, Engage Magazine, or any of our other online newsletters.
Hello everyone, I'm Tim Wildman, President of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, I'm reading through the Old Testament now, and I'm coming to places that are named that I see on our Israel tour every March. It's really fascinating to think that Jericho existed way back in the Old Testament thousands of years ago, and I can visit there today. The same can be said for Jerusalem. The Bible literally comes to life when you visit Israel, the Holy Land. Now, we're going in March. My wife Allison and I, we lead these tours every March. So if you would like to go with us, you need to go to the website and check it out. It's twholyland.com, twholyland.com. If you want a brochure sent to your mailbox, just call us at 800-FAMILIES, option 5. That's 800-FAMILIES, option 5, and we'll send you a brochure.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Brian Fisher.
Jeff and I are just kind of riding our horses out on the range right now. You hear the rhythm of that? That's us working the what do you call the thing you hold on to?
The reins.
The reins, yeah.
As spoken from Wild Wild West, Idaho. That's how
right.
That's what they call it in Idaho.
And obviously, I've had a lot of experience with that. As the recent conversation is just, what is that now? What is that thing we're riding? So anyway, the reins.
Yeah.
And I'm riding the range mentally. I'm not getting into the groove like y'all are. I'm just sort of.
Yeah, you've been dealing with kind
inner
of a
ear
bizarre health issue over the weekend.
Yeah, just a little inner ear stuff that doesn't let me move real quick without feeling a little weird.
A little woozy and.
It's all good. We're going to get through it.
All right. Well, we'll be backing you on that. All right. Got one story here at the top of the stack I want to mention just in brief. There's a lot of discussion over the last few years that the AIDS epidemic is under control. We've got it fixed. We've got it solved. Nobody's getting AIDS anymore. We've got the medications that can knock it out. We've got the medications that can knock it down. No reason for anybody to get AIDS anymore. Now, I'm looking at a piece from yahoo.com. The experts are now saying there is a high risk of, quote, losing control, end quote, of the AIDS epidemic. So the experts are saying, look, this thing is about to get away from us again. And so they say we need to step up, quote, prevention efforts, end quote. Now, antiretroviral ARV drugs are the ones that are used to treat HIV. You get it, they'll prescribe these antiretroviral ARV drugs for you. But this United Nations outfit is warning that rates of AIDS deaths and new infections are not low enough, and so we're going to have to do more. In other words, we need a lot more money to deal with this. This is from Amsterdam. The AIDS epidemic risks resurging and spiraling out of control unless billions of extra dollars are pumped into prevention and treatment, experts warned Sunday on the eve of a major world conference. You know what this is about? It just hit me. What this is about is the collapse of global warming hysteria. I got a poll in here from Gallup. Where is that puppy? It's a poll from Gallup. And they asked Americans to list the things that they were worried about, things that they were concerned about, the issues that really needed to be dealt with. And did you know that man-caused global warming was not on the list anywhere? 36 different fears that the American people have right now about what's going on in the world. Not one of them, not one of those 36, was fear of catastrophic global warming. Now, here's the deal. I want to get down to the bottom line and then get back to this HIV/AIDS thing, that I think the reason they're trying to pump air into the HIV/AIDS tire is that they're realizing now that the global warming scare isn't working anymore. They've been able to raise millions and millions and millions of dollars. They've been able to fleece energy companies for millions of dollars in donations, basically silence money. You give us a ton of money and we'll leave you alone. It's like protection money. So they basically have been shaking down the Exxon Mobils and the Texacos, and well, I don't know if Texaco exists anymore, but you know what I mean. The energy companies, they're shaking them down for millions and millions of dollars. And that thing is now gone. Nobody believes it anymore. Nobody's buying the hysteria. Nobody's getting worked up over it anymore. So it's lost all of its ability to generate these massive donations from energy companies and these massive appropriations from governments. So they've got to find a new ticket to digging the money out of our pockets and getting government to give it to them. And I think that's why they're cycling back to HIV/AIDS. Man, that worked like a charm. We had people believing every lie under the sun about homosexuality, about homosexual behavior, about HIV/AIDS. They believed every one of them. We raised a ton of dough. Let's go back to the well one more time. That's where this thing is coming from. And, of course, that's why you find in the first line of the story, the AIDS epidemic risks resurging and spiraling out of control unless billions of extra dollars are pumped into prevention. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you can start forgetting all about the global warming catastrophe. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. Remember, global temperatures have actually dropped over the last year and a half. Global temperatures are where they were in 2000. This is based on satellite information. You can't fudge with those. You can't. There's no written record. You can go in there and you can change and erase and write in new numbers. So that's a reliable thing. It measures temperatures up in the troposphere. But that has, the world global temperatures have actually dropped in the last year and a half. So they're realizing, look, we can't get away. The American people are onto us now. They got too many intelligent people out there, like on conservative talk radio, those cotton-picking conservative radio hosts. They just give people information. They give them data. They give them knowledge about global warming. We can't fool these people anymore. So let's go back to HIV/AIDS. A lot of people out there still believing lies about the AIDS epidemic. Now, here's what you need to know. Here is all you need to know, ladies and gentlemen, about this epidemic and what is needed to stop it. What is not needed to stop this epidemic is billions and billions of extra dollars. That's not needed, even though it's in the first line of this piece. Here's how. Well, let me read the paragraph number 2. An alarming rate of new infections coupled with an exploding population of young people in hard-hit countries meant the world could be steering for a, quote, crisis of epic proportions, end quote, said Mark Dybul, an American AIDS researcher and diplomat. Quote, bad things will happen if we don't have more money, end quote, he told a special event organized in Amsterdam. The world, quote, is probably at the highest risk ever of losing control of this epidemic because of demographics and because of countries not paying attention the way they once did or never did in some cases. So again, now the global warming scare didn't work, so now we're back to the HIV/AIDS scare. Now it's very, very simple, ladies and gentlemen. You want to fix the AIDS epidemic. You want to bring it under control. You want it to go away. There's only 2 things that you need to do. Tell gay men to stop having sex with other gay men. That's job number 1. Tell Gay men don't have sex with other gay men. You need to get converted to Christ. You need to pursue reparative conversion therapy. You need to come out of that dark world because it's going to kill you before you're done. But what you've got to do is stop having sex with gay men. Remember the Centers for Disease Control. And they don't, I was on CNN a number of years ago. We were talking about some kind of Boy Scout thing or whatever that had to do with the homosexual agenda. So I started talking about the data from the Centers for Disease Control. Carol Costello was the anchor. She cut me off. She ended the interview when I started talking about data from the Centers for Disease Control. That's a government outfit. That's a government office. Remember, to people on the left, government is God. This is the wisdom of God at the CDC, they will tell you. But not interested in hearing about it if it had to do with homosexual behavior. And what the CDC revealed is that they've kept statistics, ladies and gentlemen, of the AIDS epidemic since 1987, when it was first identified and diagnosed. So they've got data that they've been compiling for, 31 years now, and their data indicates that somewhere between 60 and 65% of all of the males that have ever been diagnosed with HIV/AIDS have had sex with other men. They have contracted HIV/AIDS by having sex with other men. That's 60 to 65% of all of the males that have ever contracted HIV/AIDS got it through having sex with other men. So that's the Fisher factoid of the day. Fact number one, CDC, and I'm repeating this because repetition is the mother of learning, and I want you to get this in your brain so when conversations come up, you're armed. This is cultural apologetics that we're dealing with here. And the CDC, 60 to 65% of all of the males, that's not everybody now, it's just males, of all of the males who have ever in the history of the epidemic, so it's global, it's longitudinal, who have contracted HIV/AIDS in the history of the AIDS epidemic got it by having sex with other men. That is Fisher factoid number one. So that means, therefore, if we love gay men, which we do, we love everybody. We don't want anybody to die of AIDS. It's a brutal, horrible way to go. We don't want anybody dying of that. We care for people too much to see that happen to them without getting some kind of a warning or some kind of alternative. So we don't want people to die from AIDS. We're not happy when that happens. Grieves us, breaks our heart when we see young men, prime of life, cut down by this vicious disease. So that's number one. Tell gay men, don't have sex with other gay men. Get out of that lifestyle if you want to live. Now, second thing is we need to tell people, don't shoot up. If you're a drug user, don't shoot up, because the 20 to 25% of everybody that has AIDS, HIV/AIDS, got it from a dirty needle. They got it from sharing needles with somebody. They got it from using a needle to shoot up that had not been sterilized, had not been cleaned. And of course, if they're out on the streets, that's what they're going to be doing. And then they throw them away. I mean, the streets of San Francisco right now literally littered with thousands and thousands and thousands of discarded syringes, discarded needles. So don't have sex with gay men and don't shoot up. That would deal with about 80 to 90% of everybody in the country that's got HIV/AIDS. We could take care of the epidemic in one generation. Focal Point, American Family Radio, back with hour number 2. Don't go anywhere.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Coffee is coffee with a cause. Not only is it a delicious way to start your day, but it can also wake you up to the idea of supporting the American Family Association through a product you'd normally buy anyway. Choose from morning blend, evening blend, and everything in between. Get your American Family Coffee and support the American Family Association at afastore.net.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty P. At least 2 people are dead after a gunman opened fire in the Greektown neighborhood of Toronto. Police say the suspect shot 14 people before being found dead near the scene. Trauma surgeon Dr. Najma Ahmed of St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto updates the condition of some of the victims.
Last night we received 5 of the gunshot victims from the horrific incident on the Danforth. As you can imagine, I'm not going to be able to answer any specific questions. What I am able to tell you is that 3 of the patients underwent immediate life-saving surgeries in the operating theater. All 5 of the patients remain in serious and critical condition.
The tugboat, which was involved in that tragic sinking in Branson, Missouri, which took the lives of 17 people, has been raised to the surface. Jeff Manasso has the latest.
The tugboat with a ripped canvas roof has been hoisted to the surface by a crane on a barge by the Coast Guard on what today is a calm Table Rock Lake, far different than the rough waters and violent storms that led to the deaths of 17 people on board. We're told a digital recording device has also been secured. The boat will be later taken to a secure facility for further inspection by the National Transportation Safety Board. Meantime, funerals are also set for Friday for 4 of 9 Indiana family members who died in the disaster. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Folks in central Iowa are continuing to clean up following destructive tornadoes that hit the area last week. And as Bill Bumpus reports, disaster relief organizations are mobilizing to help.
The twisters tore through communities, including the city of Marshalltown. Todd Taylor, assistant manager of U.S. Disaster Relief for Samaritan's Purse, is on the ground there.
Trees were uprooted, broken off, thrown on top of houses. Roofs, in some cases, were completely ripped off down to where the ceiling joists are exposed. Walls have been hit by trees that were flying into them, and just a scene of really mass destruction across about an 8 to 9 block wide path that goes from one side of town to the other.
He says Samaritan's Purse is mobilizing volunteer teams to serve the area.
We're going to come alongside the community to provide chainsaw help to be able to cut the trees up and get those stacked up out of the road for debris removal. We got teams that will be coming in to help with the roof repair with the blue tarps, helping people pack up their belongings for the roofs. And the homes have been damaged to the point they're not able to live there.
Taylor says they want to be the hands and feet of Christ to those who are suffering. I'm Bill Bumpus.
A Christian university in Florida is completely free of any threat of being fined for not obeying the Obama-era abortion pill mandate. To explain, here's Bob Kellogg.
The U.S. Department of Justice has abandoned any defense of the flawed abortion pill mandate. But attorney Greg Baylor of Alliance Defending Freedom says the Ave Maria School of Law was still concerned despite the Trump administration's position on the matter.
That is a position that could change under a future administration that may be hostile to religious freedom. So it wasn't enough for challengers like Ave Maria School of Law to just simply drop their cases. They needed permanent protection.
Similar rulings have been handed down in other cases in a half-dozen states, but he predicts there are more cases to come in the future.
Many of these lawsuits were filed in 2012 or 2013, and it's just taken a while for things to happen with the new administration, and now we're working towards the resolution of all of these cases.
Baylor says forcing Ave Maria to comply with the health care mandate would have been a violation of their rights under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I'm Bob Kellogg.
And an appeals court is questioning a township's efforts to make an Amish woman stop using outhouses and hook up to its sewer system, citing Pennsylvania's religious freedom law. A judge had ruled the woman was violating the State Sewage Facilities Act, but a higher court said that judge didn't adequately address the state's religious freedom law. For American Family News, I'm Rusty P.
Who is God?
What's he like?
How can we know? Your answer to these questions will impact your worship, discipleship, apologetics, and evangelism. Learn from Ravi Zacharias, Josh McDowell, Chip Ingram, and more than 60 other speakers at Southern Evangelical Seminary's 25th Annual National Conference on Christian Apologetics. It's October 12th and 13th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Get the early bird discount when you register by August 1st at ses.edu.
3 years ago,
I visited Kenya as the first sitting American president to come from Kenya.
If you actually care about election meddling, you should have a ton of questions for Barack Obama and his intelligence chiefs who knowingly allowed meddling to happen.
If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did.
Barack Obama even told his cyber people to stand down.
President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place.
My take is that Carter Page is more like Inspector Gadget than he is Jason Bourne or James Bond.
Go, Gadget, planner!
I have not seen one scintilla of evidence that this president colluded, conspired, confederated with Russia.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
You're getting into it now.
Yeah. Bring it. Focal Point, American Family Radio, hour number 2. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the network, the American Family Radio Network. By the way, just another reminder, we want to be sure that everybody gets this, understands this is coming. 2 weeks from today at this time, 2 weeks from today in this hour, you will be listening to Stacy Washington. Her program is Stacy on the Right. Focal Point is going to be trimmed to 1 hour on August 6th, and Stacy will be here with you for hour number, what you have been used to thinking of as hour number 2. It's no longer hour number 2. We got 1 hour for Focal Point, and then Stacy will have 1 hour right after mine, Stacy on the Right, and you can hear her. So 2 weeks from today, you'll be listening to Stacy rather than to me at this particular time. Now, I forgot to mention one thing about this AIDS epidemic. You know, because remember, I made a point of reading how they were saying we got to have millions of dollars to fight this thing. This is the same stuff they've been telling us about anthropogenic global warming. If we don't get millions and millions and billions of dollars, we are not going to be able to stop global warming in time to save the planet. So we need billions of dollars. It's urgent. If we don't act today, it's going to get away from us. Now they're saying the same thing again about HIV/AIDS. Why? Because the global warming thing is not working anymore. So now all of a sudden, if we don't get millions and millions and millions of dollars for AIDS, that thing is going to get away from us. So this is what they're trying to warn us about. We're just on the verge of this thing getting completely away from us. We need millions and millions and millions of dollars. Got another story in here about a transgender axe attacker. Guy's transgender. He's a man. He's identifying as a woman, but he's a man. And he defended himself in court by saying that he was possessed by a demon. That as he was going through this transgender business, he started hearing voices telling him what to do, and he finally started obeying these voices. Now, my point here is I think this guy is exactly right. I think this guy was invaded by demons, and it was connected to his fooling around with transgenderism. Transgenderism is something that comes from the bowels of hell. Satan's fingerprints are all over transgenderism. What do we know about Satan? Jesus came to what? He came that we might have life and what? Have it to the full. Have it abundantly. What did Satan came to do? He came to rob, kill, steal, and destroy. So you find something like AIDS, for instance, that kills so many of its practitioners, or homosexuality, which kills so many of its practitioners. And then you have transgenders. Remember, transgenders, 41% of them kill themselves. 41% die through suicide. So there's this huge propensity towards suicide. Where is that coming from? That's coming from the Prince of Darkness himself. And transgenderism, and whatever lies people have believed about it, that becomes the means by which if somebody believes the lie about transgenderism, that it's perfectly healthy, perfectly normal alternative to heterosexuality, and they start pursuing that as they do, it opens a door into their inner lives to demons. Now remember, demons are not at liberty to go anywhere they want. We have to do something that gives them permission to invade and trouble us from within. And one of the things that we can do to give permission to demons to come inside, open a door to them, is sexual deviancy. That's transgenderism. So this guy is certainly right, I believe, that through transgenderism, he opened his life up to demons. The demons that came into his life began speaking to him about what he needed to do. And at first, he describes this process of descending into being demonized. That's the verb that the Bible uses, is demonized. Doesn't really use demon possessions. It's demonized, influenced, affected by demons. In fact, Jesus always described people as having a demon. It was the individual that had the demon, not the other way around. So that's just for technically correct purposes. Now, it's also connected, by the way, to this guy smoking 2 joints of cannabis. So marijuana is a part of this. Marijuana is not innocent. It is a gateway drug and all that, but it's also, drugs is one of the ways in which Satan gets an invitation to come into our lives, illicit drug use. So if we as Christians care about people, we don't want them subject to the influence and the control and the direction of demons, then we are going to be against the normalization or the legalization. There's another word I'm looking for. The acceptability, the normalization, that's what I'm looking for. We will be against the normalization and the legalization of marijuana because it opens people's lives to the forces of darkness. And that happened to this transgender guy. He said he heard whispered voices after leaving a failed first date. And he wanted to sleep. But after smoking marijuana, the voices became louder. He smoked a second joint to, quote, sedate himself. Then he said they stopped being whispers. They started being actual words. I started seeing some of the violent visions I'd seen previously of me running at police with an axe and being shot dead. So the whispers were from the satanic forces, and so were the voices. Now, I forgot to mention, going back to the AIDS epidemic, I started off, I got derailed again, chased another squirrel. So remember, I was talking about they wanted billions and billions of dollars. And the point that I wanted to finish with, the solution, you know how much the solution to that epidemic costs? $0. The solution to the HIV/AIDS epidemic is a zero-cost solution. It won't cost anybody a dime. Stop having sex with other men if you're a guy, and stop shooting up with needles. $0 it will cost the government to end the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and I forgot to mention that. Okay, let's see where we're at and what we can squeeze in. Well, let's try to squeeze in clip number 6. This is Molly Hemingway. She's on Friday's edition of The Five on Fox. By their losing Kimberly Guilfoyle is moving on. Anyway, Molly Hemingway talking about the hysteria that's going on with Russia deal.
We've had a week of absolute hysteria on this topic, and it's worth, like, for me, I think there's one way to tell whether you actually care about election meddling or if you don't. If you actually care about election meddling, you should have a ton of questions for Barack Obama and his intelligence chiefs who knowingly allowed meddling to happen. They were talking about it in August, September, October of 2016. They said they knew Russia was meddling. They did nothing. Barack Obama even told his cyber people to stand down. And like you said, it was only after Donald Trump somehow won this election that all of a sudden it became this real big hullabaloo.
Hullabaloo. There's another word that I pledge never to use. Look up hullabaloo and give me some.
I don't even know how to spell it. We'll do it on the break.
I need some synonyms. But anyway, you know what Molly Hemingway is talking about here is this Russian meddling in the elections. It started under Obama, and he knew about it. It started under Obama, and he knew about it.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
United Health Group, the nation's largest health plan, is devouring ever more of the U.S. healthcare economy. It's on pace to receive more than $220 billion of revenue this year. In short, this mega health plan is raking in the cash, your cash. In 2003, just 15 years ago, United Health had just $29 billion in revenue for the entire year. This year, it's taken in $56 billion in the last 3 months alone. The $2.9 billion profit for those 3 months is 28% higher than last year. Blame Obamacare and Medicare Advantage, two laws that favor health plans, allowing them to turn our wages into their wealth.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
What if I told you that you could clean your family's laundry and help reach the next generation at the same time? That opportunity is here through a company called Redeem Clean. Every time you use Redeem Clean products, you help support the ministry of the American Family Association. In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean laundry detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made in the USA. And they were developed exclusively for the support of the American Family Association. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and order Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Again, program reminder, 2 weeks from today, you'll have the privilege of listening to Stacy Washington in this spot as we make a major program change here at Focal Point. We'll be reduced to 1 hour from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time. Stacy on the right with Stacy Washington will be on from 2 to 3 p.m. Central Time. Now, I don't know where to go with these sound bites. I want to play them all, and I don't know if I have a particular order. Let us begin with doing clip number 10. This is Rand Paul, and he's talking here about kind of an amazing thing about John Brennan. This is as phenomenal to me as it is to Rand Paul. See if you can wrap your head around this.
Now, this is alarming, and if John Brennan still has top secret clearance, can he research Donald Trump? Can he research his family? Can he type my name into computer search engines? Can he look at all of my information? It's alarming. If he has top secret clearance, as unhinged as he is now, calling the president treasonous, saying basically that he's for, the death penalty for the president. Yeah, it's alarming. If he has security clearance, it's absolutely alarming.
What would prevent him from speaking to current employees of the CIA or other intelligence agencies and getting information, secret information from them that could be leaked to the press or used against his political opponents?
Right. Well, John Brennan has a history of leaking information already, not only for political reasons, but a few years ago he linked that there was an inside informant in Yemen while that person was still on the inside in Yemen. He put that person's life at risk. They all backpedaled, and they had to rescue someone out of Yemen who was at the heart of an al-Qaeda, project trying to discover what al-Qaeda's plans were in Yemen, but John Brennan leaked their name. So he's got a history of having a problem with leaking. Head of the CIA, who in their right mind would want to let him have the power still to search through everybody's records?
But he's a private citizen who works for a cable news station. Can I get a top secret security clearance and find out government secrets and use them in the course of my job? I mean, what is this?
That's Tucker Carlson talking to Rand Paul. And Rand Paul says, look, John Brennan has a top secret security clearance that he has not lost. Remember, I told you about a friend of this program's who emailed me late last week, and said, look, I was in one of the military branches, and I had a top secret security clearance, and the DOD, the Department of Defense, has an entire bureau desk devoted exclusively to the task of revoking security clearances when somebody retires and leaves active duty service. You can't leave these people out there roaming the woods with a top secret security clearance, but John Brennan has been doing that. You know, he left office the same time that Donald Trump came in, so there's no way, that's a year and a half ago now, there's no way in the world this guy ought to have top secret security clearance, but he does. You know, and Tucker Carlson put it exactly right. Look, John Brennan is a private citizen who works for a TV station. He's a private citizen working for a cable news station. It's like your neighbor. You walk out to the driveway with him and you're both wheeling your garbage to the curb, and he's supposed to have a top secret security clearance where he can look at everything about your family and your history. It's just, it's just obscene. So I do not know what is going on with all of that. Now let's go back to clip number 7. You know, we've had a lot of folks. I've been kind of the last one to join the party, the hop on Jeff Sessions brigade. Reminds me of a game we used to have when my kids were little, and I'd come home from work, I'd just beat. And the last thing I wanted to do is to chase them around the house and play games. So I invented this new game. And the new game was called Hop on Pop. So the new game is I would just lay in the middle of the floor and they could hop on me. They could jump on me. They could beat on me. It was hop on pop time. You know, and then JD started getting a little bit bigger, and all of a sudden that seemed like a pretty lousy,
it was kind of like a
idea.
Kind of like a massage until then, wasn't
until then, yeah. But that's what we did. So it's kind of a hop on Sessions deal. It's been going on, you know, because people are very upset with him for not being more aggressive and all that kind of thing. I agree. I'm disappointed in him. You know, Trump is clearly disappointed with him. He wanted an alley fighter, and you know, he's got a Southern gentleman. Anyway, clip 7. Here is Jeff Sessions talking to Maria Bartiromo yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures on Fox, and talking about the fact that the FBI used this unverified dossier to get this warrant to surveil Carter Page and the Trump campaign. Here's how their exchange went.
Are you, sir, investigating the fact that the FBI used the dossier to get a wiretap against Trump associates, and they did not tell the FISA court that the Democrats and Hillary Clinton paid for that dossier?
Let me tell you, every FISA warrant based on facts submitted to that court have to be accurate. That will be investigated and looked at, and we are not going to participate as a Department of Justice in providing anything less than the proper disclosure to the court before they issue a FISA warrant. Other than that, I'm not going to talk about the details of it, but I tell you, we're not going to allow that to happen.
No, so when Jeff Sessions says we're not going to allow that to happen, I believe he means it. I believe he's going to do something about it. Maybe not as fast as we would like, but he will get around to it. And again, President Trump apparently is a faithful listener to Focal Point, and we apparently have prodded him to action. Just kidding. Anyway, Jeff's looking at a headline that just popped up on Fox News. What is it?
But we were seeing up on the screen that Sarah Sanders was giving a news conference, a press conference, and apparently she said that Trump is definitely looking into revoking security clearances for several top Obama-era intelligence and law officials. That would include Comey, who would like to revoke his security clearance.
What's he doing with top security?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe.
What is he doing with top security?
CIA Director John Brennan.
Yikes.
And former National Security Advisor Susan Rice. Oh. And one more, Director of National Security Michael Hayden, who worked under George Bush.
Oh, man. You know, think about Brennan. This guy's a Muslim convert.
Yeah.
You think about Andrew McCabe. I mean, the meeting between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok to figure out what the insurance policy was going to be in case Trump got elected, that was hatched in his office. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were plotting a coup against the President of the United States, plotting to undermine our electoral process, And he's still got top secret security clearance.
Yeah, and why
it
would
just boggles the mind.
Why would Comey still have security clearance? He was fired, correct?
He was fired. What's he doing with security clearance?
What about Susan Rice? That one's a baffling one.
You know, and Susan Rice, she's the one that went on national TV after Benghazi and lied on all 5 major Sunday talk shows about Benghazi. And went on 5 talk shows and said it was the fault of this internet video. I mean, that kind of stuff just flabbers my gas, ladies and gentlemen. I can't picture it. I can't understand it. So anyway, that's so apparently President Trump finally getting around to revoke, and of course he can do it. He's head of the executive branch. They're the ones that give the top security clearances, so he can revoke them, and it looks like he's getting about ready to do it. Now here's Andrew McCarthy, one of my main go-to guys when it comes to issues of national security and all that kind of thing. This is clip number 8, and he's talking here about some of the miserably pathetic information that's coming out now about this FISA warrant and the evidence on which it was issued. Here's what he had to say, clip 8.
I'm really embarrassed because I told people for months that this could never, ever happen. What I told people was that you're not even going to hear about the dossier when we finally learn what's in the FISA warrants, that what the FBI will do is what the FBI always does, which is they'll take 7 or 8 facts that are important, they'll scrub them so that the FBI can verify and corroborate them, and those will be put into the affidavit, and that'll be the only thing you hear about. When you read this thing, it's astonishing. They actually, it's as if they took the dossier and slapped whole district court caption on it and gave it to the judge, which is exactly what I told people would never happen.
All right, so what Andy McCarthy is saying, I mean, the misconduct here on the part of intelligence officials, he says, is like just staggering. It's like they took this dossier full of unverified, unverifiable information, and they slapped their imprimatur on it and said this is a piece of intelligence. This dossier has verified intelligence from the intelligence agencies, and we're giving it to you, and we are asking a surveillance warrant on Carter Page and anybody associated with the Trump campaign. And Andy McCarthy says, man, I'm just embarrassed all over myself because I made the mistake of thinking that the people in the FBI and the DOJ at this time were of higher character than they proved to be. I never imagined in my life that they could stoop so low to do what they have done to get that FISA warrant. Now, again, where we find the blame for all of this, James Clapper, this is another guy that has security clearance, shouldn't be anywhere near anything remotely like this. He's a guy that lied to Congress. Remember, they asked him, are you collecting everybody's communications? He said, it's not happening. Not happening. Lied to Congress under oath. And then it later admitted that that's what he done. So here is James Clapper talking about who started this whole thing in the first place.
If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set off a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today, notably Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you can throw a president under the bus, but that looks to me like that's what James Clapper is doing. You know, James Clapper is saying, look, you want to know who started all of this? It was President Obama. President Obama is the one that directed us to do this intelligence community assessment of whoever it was, whether it was Carter Page or George Papadopoulos or Donald Trump. Those orders came directly from the top. They came from President Obama. That didn't come from the head of our intelligence services. That came from President Obama. And if he hadn't done it, if he hadn't given this order, we probably would not have done the assessment that led to the Mueller investigation. So think about that for a second, ladies and gentlemen. The reason there is a Mueller investigation is because of Obama, because of an order that he gave to compile an intelligence assessment that led to the Mueller investigation. Without Obama priming the pump, without Obama pulling the initial trigger, we never would have had a Mueller investigation. So you need look no further than the former occupant of the White House, looking for somebody to blame for the Mueller investigation. Be right back. Stay with us. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
Here on American Family Radio, this is David Wolin with Haven Ministries, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. Most of the time, getting a diagnosis is no big deal. But when you can't get one, all you want to know is what's wrong and whether healing is possible. Now, when it comes to diagnosis and healing, there has never been anyone in history like Jesus. Unlike any doctor, Jesus didn't have to run tests to know what was wrong, and he could heal simply by speaking. But that wasn't why he came. As Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Jesus had come to deal with what's truly wrong with our world and with us. He came to atone for our sin and give eternal life. And the thing he requires of us is faith in him. Try out Anchor Devotional today. Visit getanchor.com.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for a healthcare plan, or more importantly, if you signed up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called Medi-Share. Medi-Share is a Christian healthcare sharing program. It's been around for 25 years. They have hundreds of thousands of members all across the country. And get this, over the years, Medi-Share members have shared more than $2.5 billion of each other's medical bills. Best of all, you could save a lot of money with Medi-Share. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings may be less or more, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You can join Medi-Share anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. Just hit *345. That's *345. *345.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Want to just give you just some kind of unrelated news stories. Let's speak just for a minute about this transgender issue. And they have a new thing now called transphobia. I mean, it was predictable, but you got homophobia. Now you've got transphobia. You have the fear of transgenders. I'm not afraid of transgenders. I have no transphobia. Nobody I know has transphobia. It's just a made-up thing. I'm not afraid of homosexuals. I don't fear homosexuals. I have zero homophobia. I have zero Islamophobia. Well, there's some Muslims I am afraid of, actually, now that I think about it. My sister told me there's a new term now that's gaining some currency, and it's hobophobia. Hobophobia.
Afraid of people that travel on chains?
No. Afraid of like homeless encampments and people coming up to you and accosting you on the street. You got a fear of that's a hobophobia. Anyway, Facebook has blocked links. Remember, Facebook is noted now. They made their bones blocking conservative sites. I mean, they've slowed our traffic at AFA to a crawl. I mean, you could see the traffic just fall right off a cliff on the Focal Point Facebook page and on our main Facebook page here at AFA. So their reputation is blocking conservative sites. But this time they're being blasted for blocking a link to a women's rights group. The group's supporters have blasted the campaign as a disgrace and accused Facebook of suppressing free speech. So Facebook has been slammed for censoring this feminist campaign group after it was accused of transphobia. So this Women's Place UK, that's the name of this group, they campaign for women-only spaces. So they don't want transgender people crowding their spaces because they're not fooled. They know that half of the transgenders that want in their space aren't women at all. They're men. They do not want men crowding their spaces. And so Facebook says, all right, you guys are malicious. You, this women's group, you're malicious because you don't want transgendered, you don't want men associating with your women's group. So we'll see how all of that plays out. And after a while, you get all these, all these isms and all of these different quirks, all these different sexualities, and it's just inevitable that they're going to wind up generating this tremendous conflict with each other. About a third of newspapers have suffered layoffs since 2017, and this even includes digital newspapers. They're seeing their revenue drop, and some of it's actually related to tariffs that Trump has imposed on newsprint from Canada, and that has made their newsprint much more expensive, and that's really impacted revenue and all that. But a lot of it's just circulation drop. I mean, you couldn't explain the drop in digital newspapers by that. But people are just, they don't trust newspapers anymore. They don't trust the liberal media. They don't trust the talking snake media. They don't trust it. That's why more and more people are turning to sources like Focal Point in order to get news they feel like they can trust. Because everybody knows that you have to be inherently suspicious of everything that you hear. I'm on CNN every day. I read stories from the New York Times every day. Have I done my column today? I haven't done my column yet.
You didn't.
Whoa, I better get on that. Going so fast, having so much fun, I completely forgot.
And you still have clips to burn.
But anyway, what that tells you is that people are looking for some kind of trustworthy source of news, and that's what we want to be for you. Here's an immigration note. A North Texas lawn mowing company has come under fire after an old sample business card. So this isn't even their current business card. It's an old sample business card that they never even used. The sample card was from 3 years ago, and this is what it says: American owned. Again, this is a lawn service company. American owned, your alternative to illegal lawn services. And then another slogan: taking back Carrollton, that's Texas, taking back Carrollton, Texas, one lawn at a time. And one guy who was apparently an illegal alien looking for work, he says, I was up, I thought he said he broke down. He broke it down. Sorry, my bad. So anyway, the card samples were made up to kind of do sort of some polling about which slogans and so forth were working, but he never printed them. So he, so you want, I have no idea. When work crews come to our place, I don't know who's legal and who's not. I'm assuming that some of the work crews, I assume probably half of the people that are coming are probably have no right to even be in the country, but I don't have any way to check their references or have no legal authority to do that. So you just kind of, so this guy says, if you're tired of illegal aliens mowing your lawn, give us a call and you can be safe with us. Donald Trump, you might have heard this from Donald Trump. He warned Rouhani of Iran. In caps, all in caps, never, ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious. Now, Iran needs this because they're bad actors. Barack Obama struck that meaningless nuclear deal with them. That was worthless. They're still developing their nuclear stockpile. Haven't slowed them down. Obama sent them $150 billion, maybe even more, which they're funneling straight into Hamas and terrorist activities. But anyway, this is all in caps. This is how you shout at somebody on Twitter. Put it all in caps. That's what Trump has done. It's all in caps. You know why he's doing this? Because he got blistered by everybody. You were Putin's puppy dog. You were Putin's poodle. You couldn't stand up to Putin. You were a disgrace. You were weak. You were pusillanimous. You're just his puppet. He played you like a Stradivarius, all that kind of stuff. And Trump is saying, oh, hey, you want tough? I'll show you tough. And now everybody's saying this guy's a warmonger.
Yeah.
This guy wants to start World War III. So, the reality is with the left, and the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, with the left, just ignore them. I mean, we need to understand and know what they're saying, but don't let what they say get to you or get under your skin, because it's not based in reality. None of their stuff is rooted in the facts and reality. It's just all hysteria. All right, my column is up at afa.net. Again, I started to talk about this at the top of this hour, and we're 40 minutes after, and I haven't even started. So I'm just going to have to introduce it. You'll have to look it up on your own. We're going to go to phones here in just a few minutes. But the New York Times published an article today from a Harvard scholar saying that Leviticus 18:22, which says a man must not lie with a man as he lies with a woman, it is an abomination. This guy from Harvard is saying if you go back far enough, this verse actually supports gay sex. It promotes gay sex. It doesn't forbid it. That's the way it looks, but in reality, it actually encourages gay sex. Now, what you need to know about this guy, this writer, his name is Aiden Dershowitz, and he works at some Harvard thing. I didn't copy down his, I got the link here somewhere. Let me see who he works with. It doesn't say it either. So his bio is not in the New York Times piece, at least in the one that I printed out. But he said that the Leviticus 18:22 actually supports gay sex. It permitted gay sex rather than condemned it. But I want you to just notice how many caveat words he uses, words that provide wiggle room. This is in one paragraph. And I'll just emphasize the wiggle words. Many scholars believe that the section in which Leviticus 18 appears was added by a comparatively late editor, perhaps one who worked more than a century after the oldest material in the book was composed. An earlier edition of Leviticus, then, may have been silent on the matter of sex between men. So scholars believe, they don't know, they don't have evidence, they just believe, like some people believe in the tooth fairy, and perhaps there was a comparatively late editor, and an earlier edition of Leviticus, if it exists, it may possibly have been silent about sex between men. So anyways, got all of those caveats in here. Then the argument is just ridiculous. He uses the phrase, or camps on the phrase, that you find like in Genesis 9:22, to uncover the nakedness of. Now, to uncover the nakedness of is a euphemism for sexual intercourse. But when you have that phrase used to refer to a man, uncovering the nakedness of a man, uncovering the nakedness of your father, or uncovering the nakedness of your father's brother, or uncovering the nakedness of your brother, for instance, that reference, the nakedness of, refers to your father's wife, or to your father's brother's wife, or to your brother's wife. Why? Because that's a nakedness that properly belongs to your father. Your father's wife and her nakedness and their sexual intimacy, that sexual intimacy is something that belongs exclusively to your father. It's a nakedness that belongs to him. You uncover it, that is, if you have sexual intercourse, that's a euphemism for sexual intercourse, then you have committed an abomination. So that's what he tries to use. But the reality here is, I'm going to make this very quick because I want you to go read the article itself. But there's two problems with his view. One is the problem that I just explained to you about his completely botched the interpretation of the phrase "uncover the nakedness of." That goes back to Ham. Remember Genesis 9, uncovered the nakedness of his father. What was he doing? Is he was sleeping with his mother, sleeping with Noah's wife. That's why Canaan was cursed and not Ham. Why? Because Canaan was the illicit offspring of that incestuous union between Ham and his own mother. I will talk with you about the second major problem of this theory when we get right back. We'll take your calls. The number to call is 888-589-8840.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
Netflix continues to ignore the outcry about 13 Reasons Why. The American Family Association, along with Parents Television Council and several other pro-family groups, have reached out to the streaming service urging the cancellation of their program. Netflix has not even responded to our letter. Instead, they released an even more vile Season 2 and are producing Season 3. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings says their program is engaging and that it fosters discussion of taboo topics like suicide and sexual assault. But at what cost? 14-year-old Anna Bright and several other teens have committed suicide after watching the show. Hastings calls our objections propaganda. Does he feel the profitability of his company is worth more than the lives damaged or lost because of his show? Please sign our petition to Netflix, learn more, and share our action alert when you visit afa.net. And pray Reed Hastings will recognize the dangers of 13 Reasons Why.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point.
Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Program is Focal Point. Again, don't forget, 2 weeks from today in this hour, you will have the privilege of listening to Stacy Washington. Program is Stacy on the Right. Now, I want to just finish my comments on this article in the New York Times trying to make the case that Leviticus 18:22 actually authorizes sex between men. It's just absolutely bizarre how he can turn that thing completely upside down. I mean, it's just bizarre. But there's a textual problem with what he's saying here, and that is there's absolutely no textual evidence that there is any Hebrew manuscript anywhere in history that makes this verse say what he's talking about. You know, I went and looked at my copy of what's called the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text is what's considered the most authentic version of the Hebrew text that you can use. It's what's always used to translate the Old Testament into Hebrew. And they will list if there are variants that you could find elsewhere, like if the Septuagint provides a variant, because sometimes the Septuagint will have a different translation than what you get in a translation that's translating right from the Hebrew. It'll indicate that. I went and looked at Leviticus 18:22 today. There's nothing there. So there's absolutely no textual evidence for this interpretation that this guy's coming up with. And the Septuagint. Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. The Masoretic text, I mean, that goes way back. Moses wrote in the Masoretic text. So that goes back, let's say, goes back to whenever, 1400 BC. And you have, of course, prophets writing since. But let's say the Masoretic text goes back to at least, you're talking about Leviticus here. This goes back to the time of Moses. You're going back to 1400 BC here. And if he's right about all these emendations that had been made in the text to make it say that homosexuality was okay, well, by the time they got around to translating the Septuagint in about 350 BC and into the 2nd century BC, all those emendations would have been discovered, been circulated, and they would have been incorporated. But there's no hint of it in the Septuagint. So it's just I'm trying to think of a polite word to describe it, but it's just a trash. It's just a trash article. It's beneath what are supposed to be the standards of the New York Times even run something like this. All right, two quick sound bites, and then we're going to go straight to the phones. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's start with our old friend, our Valley girl, Marie Harf. And this is interesting as we come up on the midterms. Listen to this.
Well, I think Middle America has tuned out a lot of the conversation about foreign policy because they're worried about the economy, they're worried about education and healthcare costs.
So that's another indication that the Democrats are getting desperate for a message. Remember, they're giving up on the Russian thing, on the collusion thing, because there's nothing there. That's why they're trying to go toward obstruction, because the collusion thing is simply not working out. Now, what Marie Harf is saying in general, she used to be a spokesman for President Obama. What she is saying in general, people are just tuning out all this foreign policy stuff. They're tuning out all the bloviating bilge about North Korea, all the bloviation about Russia, all the bloviation about China. They're just tuning that out. They've lost interest in that. So there's no way you can win an election on foreign policy because people just don't care. Now, here is Dick Blumenthal. He's on KCDC talking about the upcoming SCOTUS nomination, the vote on Brett Kavanaugh. And, the Democrats have been trying to push this thing off. They've been trying to delay it. You got to push it off. You got to delay it. We shouldn't ever have a vote on a nomination when there's an election coming up. We just need to delay this. We need to get it beyond the midterms because we need to get a new Congress in place before we have this vote. Now, here's Dick Blumenthal blowing that completely to shreds. Let's listen.
If this nomination vote is delayed until literally the days or weeks before the midterm elections, it will be the height of cynical manipulation in a vote that is probably the most important that most of us will ever cast.
All right, so again, that's the reason to just pay no attention to the left wing, no attention to the mainstream media. No matter what Donald Trump does with the vote on Kavanaugh, they will find reasons to rip it to shreds. Ignore them, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's start grabbing some calls. Let's start with Doug in Little Rock, Arkansas. Doug, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Oh, yes. I guess what's on my mind has been the scope of the investigation about foreign meddling into the election of the presidency. Seems to me that we should open this up, that a foreign actor would be interested in more than just Russia. There'd be others that'd be interested in affecting our elections, and they'd be more interested in affecting more than just the presidency, but also other political offices. So shouldn't we be investigating, I don't know, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, we should, and that, of course, that's a question for Jeff Sessions because he's the Attorney General, he's the head of the Department of Justice and the FBI. He would be the one to make the calls on who needs to be investigated, and so we're hoping, he said we're going to investigate what went into this FISA warrant, so we're hoping he's going to dig into the bottom of that because that's going to start to inch closer to Obama and to Hillary and all that kind of stuff. I think the main thing right now, Doug, that we would like to see Jeff Sessions investigate as the head of the Department of Justice is Hillary Clinton's email scandal. And there's some other stuff she's already skated on because we're past the statute of limitations. That's how long those things have been out there hanging fire. All right, Doug, I appreciate that. And yeah, I agree with you. The investigation ought to be as expansive as it needs to be to apprehend and prosecute the people that are committing crimes. Let's go to Edith, Jacksonville, Florida. Edith, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, hi, Brian. I have a question, but I have a request first. If you don't mind,
hit me.
If there are any of your listeners who are having trouble with your broadcasting on all of the AFR stations, you've already gone off the air 5 times just during this show. I keep reporting it to all the screeners, but I would like to know if there's anybody else having this problem with the Jacksonville, Florida station, if they please call in. It's bad enough we lose an hour of you. I don't want to lose half of what I got left.
All right. Well, I'll look into that, Edith. Now, does the signal just disappear? Does it just drop out?
It dies. Everything goes dead for up to 10 to up to 22 seconds. And
wow.
it's right
So
in the middle of
drops
all
out
the
for
conversations, your prayers, everything else, and it's not just your show. It's all the AFR programs coming out of my area, which is I'm at 3225 zip code in Jacksonville, Florida, and it's
okay. Edith, we'll follow up on that. Jacksonville's one of our newer stations, so we want to make sure that one's operating at top speed. All right, Edith, what's your other comment?
My question was, do you know what is happening in regards to the FISA court judge who granted the warrant without examining the origin or the source of the evidence?
Well, nothing's being done to him right now. We don't even know who he is. I mean, the FISA court is a secret court. Now, we know who the judges are that are on that court, but we don't have the information about which judges issued which subpoenas. We don't have that information. And that's probably for their protection and all that kind of stuff. So we don't know what's going to be done to that judge. You know, Jeff Sessions is saying he's going to investigate it. I believe that he will. And if he finds some misconduct on the part of that FISA judge on the way he handled the information, the request for the warrant, I believe something will be done about that. All right, I need to thank you, and we hope we'll get that station on without any kind of interruption. All right, thank you for that. Let's grab a call from Andy in Georgia. Andy, welcome. What's on your mind?
What's going on, man?
Whoops, guess we lost Andy. Having trouble all over the place. All right, let's go to Jamie in Kinston, North Carolina. Welcome, Jamie. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir, Mr. Brian. Now, before you send me to the brig, I've got best permission to go a little off topic here. I got a biblical question for you, if I may.
Okay, shoot.
I've always wondered about, do you remember when there was a certain church that Paul was contending with? They were having lawsuits among each other within their specific entity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to get your biblical aerial view on this, what you think it means. Are we not allowed as believers in Christ to get earthly restitution or recourse if it comes to trying to be made whole as a legal term to get back what someone stole or didn't render services for?
Yeah, no. We are absolutely eligible to do that and to use the court system to do that. That's why the court system exists. It exists for the purposes of justice. That can often involve finding somebody at fault and ordering restitution be made. So, yes, we are completely eligible for those provisions of the legal system. Now, what Paul is talking about in 1 Corinthians 6 is when you have a relatively minor dispute with a Christian brother and you guys can't come to some kind of agreement, he says it's a loss for the cause of Christ if you take that dispute to a court and you let total pagans resolve that issue for you. And then later he says it would be better. You know, one day, Jamie, he says, we are going to sit in judgment over nations, over angels, really. But you and I, one day, we're going to be judges. You know, when Christ comes back, we're going to have, some of us are going to have jobs to do. I don't know who are going to be the judges, but some of us are going to be responsible to sit in judgment on criminal behavior that happens among the great unwashed when Jesus comes back to set up his kingdom. But what Paul says is you can go to court basically before brothers. Why not have brothers resolve this issue for you? And I participated in a few of these, Jamie. It's real short on time here, but I participated in a few of these where you've got two brothers or two believers that have a conflict that involves property or involves money or something like that. I have convened a little mini court of Christians who have experience in those areas where the conflict is, have them both come in, present their case, and then we have the judges give a verdict, and they go into it with a commitment to accept the verdict and to honor it. It's worked great on a couple of occasions. We'll be right back tomorrow. See you then.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
As a federal or state employee, you have the opportunity to support the American Family Association through the combined federal campaign. By designating a monthly payroll deduction using 12037, you help AFA continue to fight for your family. So when you complete your CFC form, remember, AFA's number is 12037.